Hey guys, welcome back to Home Theater Gurus. Now today we're going to be talking about a speaker that's often crippled due to where it's placed. I mean, people can follow the Dolby guide, place it per their spec, and have terrible performance, frankly. It just does not perform well. They have problems hearing these speakers, and they have a humongous job, and that's your surrounds. Your surrounds are responsible for pulling everything from the LCR, the front of your room, to the, to your side. Now, of course, if you have rears in a 7.1, you go from a 5.1 with surrounds. 7.1 adds the rears behind you. Now that, of course, is an ideal setup. You don't always have room for that. You need 3.5, 4 feet off that back wall to really pull it off well, where you get some good imaging from your rears. But today we're just talking about the surround. So of course I do home theater plans, but also do Zoom consults. Now this is a guy that came to me for a consult. He didn't want to go for the full plan, so we just went through his room and I completely changed where everything went. And that's often the case. If someone follows the Dolby guides per spec to the T, for the Atmos, I like the studio guide, so we're going to change everything there. But for the bed layer, there's some issues that we're going to be going over. Now this guy, he had it set up, I think his speakers were like at 110 degrees, 100, 110, slightly behind him, but he also had rears. His rears were a little bit too wide, so I brought the rears in some, used a little bit different angle. And also for the surrounds, he had the issue with them being at 110, he's got high back chairs, I mean, they're blocked. So I moved them, and this is what he had to say. The sound is so much more enveloping, it's amazing. Sounds like a completely different home theater system. And of course, he's gonna build a room, and we're gonna do a full room plan when he gets to that stage. The surrounds in most rooms are misplaced or not placed for performance. We'll put it that way, for performance. So they're very, very easy to beat. So if you go by Dolby specs, your surrounds should be 90 to like 110 degrees back and ear level. Well, if they're 90 to 110 degrees back, first let's say you don't have a high back chair. You have low backs, you have a couch. Someone sits next to you, this is what happens. Now remember, in a studio, it's a guy sitting in a single chair. That is not reality for most of us in home theater, where we have multiple people and we have high back chairs. But this is a low back chair. So you see the purple is without anyone sitting next to us. As soon as someone sits next to us, about at 3K, it drops off like a rock. And those are your spatial cues. I mean, now that speaker is dull, lifeless, and so our objects are just not going to really feel like they're being pulled to the sides. Performance is going to suck. And of course, when you run room correction, there's no one sitting there. You're probably not even in a seat. You're behind the seats or something, making sure you're out of the way. That's not what we're getting whenever someone sits next to us. Now again, this is just a human head, and it does that much damage. Now for us with high back chairs, it's even worse. If you look at a high back chair, we've got some issues really past 500, but really at 1K, it completely just tanks off. And so it's even worse, of course, with the high back chair. So this is happening even at 90. If you have your speakers at 90 and you recline in your high back chair and you look beside you, there's a seat back, this chair beside you didn't recline, there's a seat back right in the way of that surround, completely blocking it. So placing them at 90 to 110 in ear level is horrible. It may look good on a piece of paper, on a PDF and a guide somewhere, but for actual performance, I mean, it is just murdering your performance, and that speaker is going to perform really, really poorly. Some of you guys may have noticed trained room designers don't place their surrounds there. They don't have them, first of all, they're not at ear level. You can look at even like the Trinov guide, they're lifted. I think up to a foot. I use centimeters, I believe, but it's about a foot. I mean, it just depends on the angle. Of course, the wider the room, you can go a little bit higher. The more narrow the room, you may have to keep them down some, because we don't want to lose separation to the Atmos channel. So we have to think about that as well, because we need that separation to get proper lift and to have really good performance from our Atmos channels. But they're going to be raised, and they're not going to be behind them. They may even be a little bit to the front to forward of your listening position. So they may not be at 90, they might be at 85, might be at 80. And you may think, well, that's gonna throw everything off. Well, if you think about how we hear sounds, especially on the bed layer, we've got two ears, so we can really highly pinpoint anything moving, kind of forward of us. We use our two ears to, if we hear a little bit more out of this ear than that ear, our brain knows it's shifting that way. But once we get over here, I mean, it's really hard for us to tell something at 90 degrees or even 70 degrees. that is just, our brains really can't compute, because you know, this ear's on this side of the head and those sounds are staying over there. It's not like once it gets over here where we really can use both ears. So let's go ahead and simplify this to, if you sit down and you cannot see your surrounds, they're not in a good location. If someone sits next to you and you can't see that surround, it's not in a good location. If you got high back chairs, you sit down, you can't see them, it's not in a good location. They must be visible so you can audibly hear them the way they should be, and that is going to be substantial. I mean, just making a change like that, you know, now all of a sudden your highs aren't completely being absorbed by a seat back or someone sitting next to you. You're going to get drastically better surround sound. You know, if you can see them at all times, you're not going to have to worry about it. It's going to sound great whether people are sitting in there with you or you're sitting all by yourself. So I guess we'll call that the tip for the day. If you can't see your surrounds, do something about it. That's going to be it for this one, guys. If you have any questions you want answered, drop them down in the comments section below. I do look at those. You know, if there's something that everyone wants to know, or I feel like, you know, it's a really good question that we get a lot, we'll do a video on it. We'll do a Q&A. All right, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I'll see y'all for the next one.